Before I go on to the video, I'd like to mention that I've recently made a Patreon. It's linked below. However, I'd like to say that please take care of yourself first. I really don't expect anything from you. I make this content for me and for you, and it's completely free, hence you should consume it for free. So please do not feel any obligation at all. It's just there. It's not really anything important. Just remember, you matter more than I do. So do not at all ever feel obligated to support me. Do not ever feel bad that you're not able to give something back to me, because I know how that feels. There are a lot of people who I watch and who I support, who I always want to gift bits, or I want to gift subs, or I want to support them on Patreon. So I know how it feels to feel bad that you can't do that. So do not by any means feel obligated to do any of that for me. I'd also like to ask you to like the video if you enjoy it, consider subscribing if you're new, and click the notification bell so that you never miss my uploads. Let me know in the comments what you think about the future of this universe and what you'd like to see. If you'd like to keep up with me, my socials are linked below, or you could join my Discord server to make everything easier. This video was requested by one of my friends, Gup, so this one's for you, Gup. Thank you for watching. Now on to the video. Without a doubt, The Last of Us paved the pathway for powerful storytelling in video games. This generation-defining game featured a compelling and emotional narrative that competed with, and in some ways exceeded, the beauty of cinema. In my opinion, its sequel built upon these successes and told an even stronger, more emotional, and even more engaging story. Now, the games in total have over 515 Game of the Year awards given to them. These two games together are almost more than some of the biggest franchises to ever exist. Due to this fact, it's highly likely that Naughty Dog will develop a third entry for the series. So, in this video, I'll be talking about what I think about the future of the beautifully bleak universe of The Last of Us, as well as what I expect, want, and would like from it. Disclaimer: this video's not going to feature me laying out a story or anything like that. It's more so me putting forward interesting ideas and themes that I'd like to see incorporated in the next games. Anyways, moving on. The first game was about love, and the second game was about hate. For the third game, I'd like to see a story about restoration. A story about rebuilding. As I mentioned in my Two Sides of the Same Coin video, which you should watch if you haven't, we played through Abby's path of redemption. We see her become better, become mentally stronger, and finally learn to fight for something meaningful. And we leave Ellie in a broken place. Now she's on the journey of redemption, just as Abby was. She needs to regain her lost humanity, as Abby did, and she needs to find the happiness and something worth fighting for, like Abby did. This is probably gonna get me killed, but I don't want to see Ellie's story. At least, not at the beginning. The ambiguity of it leaves so much to be thought about. There's so many things that could have happened, and I like it better like that. Abby's story intrigues me, because she's achieved redemption and finally found the fireflies. We've already played through a redemption arc. We've already played through Abby's redemption arc. So, I don't want to directly play Ellie's redemption arc. For The Last of Us Part 3, I want the game to pick up right after The Last of Us Part 2. We know from the post-completion menu screen that Abby did reach Catalina Island, but I want to see how she finally reached the fireflies. I want to see her broken after the fight with Ellie, reaching the shores of Catalina. I want to see how she overcomes the challenges she'll surely face when traveling through Catalina. With no weapons, no strength, and no help, it'll surely be an immense challenge for her and for Lev. After everything the Rattlers and Ellie put them through, it'd be near impossible to reach the fireflies properly, but eventually they'll find her. I don't really want us to play this part. I want to watch as Abby treks through Catalina and see her finally stumble upon these fireflies. I want to see her worry over Lev, even though she's just as drained and exhausted as he is. I feel like this type of intro will be reminiscent of how The Last of Us Part 2 opened right after The Last of Us Part 1. It'll give us kind of the same feeling we felt seeing Joel sing for Ellie. It'll show us the depth of the relationship we grew to love between these two characters. This unexpected bond they built over time was a result of Abby's attempt to reclaim her humanity. Joel and Ellie had the same dynamic. A broken person falls in love with a child that they never expected to love, but this won't end the same way because there's nothing Abby has to hide from Lev. There isn't a growing rift between the two. All their cards are laid out on the table, and they now have the time to grow and heal as individuals. Their future looks much brighter than Joel and Ellie's did, because Joel and Ellie were left at such an emotionally difficult place because everything they built after Salt Lake was built on a lie. But with Abby and Lev, we can have the satisfaction that we got during the museum sequence, and this time, hopefully, it won't be as short-lived. It would be fascinating to see if Abby would finally be able to understand why Joel did what he did. After all, she fought for Lev the same way Joel fought for Ellie. Joel killed every single firefly in the hospital to protect the girl he loved. We all know this. It's something I've said a million times over at this point. And Abby knew why Joel did what he did, but now, since she has a similar relationship with Lev, she might be able to come to terms with it, to truly see everything from his perspective. She went through so many of her own people to protect Lev, to keep him safe from the suffering. She wanted to take both him and Yara far away from everything, settle down with the fireflies, like Joel and Ellie settled down in Jackson. There are just too many parallels in these games. The writers developed these characters with the idea of cycles in mind, and those ideas are so prominent through every single corner of this game. So if the third game explores these ideas of Abby's acceptance and true understanding of Joel's intentions and actions, it would be truly heartwarming to me. Because now she holds that same love and that same passion for Lev that Joel held for Ellie, so she gets it. Now that they've reached the fireflies, they must rebuild. They need to go rebuild themselves and hopefully the world. And speaking of rebuilding, another thing that would be interesting to me is the concept of a proper, stable government and community in the world of The Last of Us. The thing is, we got little hints of it here and there. For example, with Jackson, we saw more of a residential community. It had patrollers and people knew how to fight, but it wasn't like the WLF. With the WLF, we saw an organized military community. Yet, the goal of the Fireflies is to rebuild the world. Try to get it back to the way it once was, one step at a time. In a way, the Fireflies are a mix of both that we've seen. A military group like the WLF, as well as a community like Jackson. The goal of the Fireflies was always to rebuild, to craft the world again, make it similar to how it was pre-outbreak. They always wanted to rebuild everything. That was Marlene's goal. She wanted to take the initiative to make the world whole again. They wanted to rebuild everything, but her ideals were at odds with Joel's. There was nothing in the world left to save anymore, according to him. Nothing left to save except his girl, Ellie, which was why he killed them all. So what would be left to rebuild? What would the Fireflies be able to do with what they have now? Because Joel killed the only known person available to be able to craft a cure, and the only immune person that has ever existed that anyone knows about, at least within the people we know, is Ellie. Of course, there has to be someone else immune out there. It can't just be Ellie, but we don't know that yet. We don't know about anybody else. So what else can be changed in this brutal post-apocalyptic world? Could they build cities and communities so massive that it can keep out large hordes of infected? Could they find a way to keep the infected at bay, neutralize them in some way, reduce the effects of the fungus or the spread? The Fireflies had collections of all types of people. Doctors, nurses, historians, scientists, military personnel, they had everything. Again, sure, Jerry was probably the best they had, but surely the research accumulated by the pre-Salt Lake incident Fireflies could be enough for something substantial to come of it. something could be done. I don't know what. Of course, I'm no narrative genius and I'm no scientific genius either, but I can do my best to use the context and assume that there are a plethora of possibilities with what they have. Because what they have is probably much more than anybody else does. So they could use this research to create something. I'd love to see Abby take control of the situation. She spent years up till this point chasing the man who took everything from her, giving nothing back to the world in return. But I want to see her finally fight for everything Owen would have wanted. The person she loved, who was now gone as a result of the thirst for vengeance, would be avenged by her. She lost all her friends, but now she has the ability and means to fight for the world again, to do what they originally set out to do by joining the Fireflies. Owen was right, she did stop looking for the light. Yet now that she's found it again, it would be phenomenal to see what she could do. With Lev by her side and a newfound sense of hope, Abby could accomplish great things. Some really, really great things. As a part of the Fireflies now, as a part of a massive group that thrives on hope, anything could happen. Again, therein lies the theme of restoration. With everything they have, they can make so many things happen. And who knows, maybe along the way, we could see Ellie again. Ellie at peace with herself. Ellie better than she was when we left her. Apart from that, I'd love to see some cool new infected. The addition of Shamblers was something I didn't expect at all. But the mutations were such a cool thing to see, and the Rat King was badass as hell. So it would be pretty intriguing if we could see how the desert geography of California affects infected. Or maybe seeing how dense rainforests affect infected too. Geography's effects on the cordyceps mutations would be such a mind-blowing concept to explore, and I feel like it's something that would keep the enemy types completely fresh. And I really need different types of cool communities. For example, the Scars, with their heavy religious followings and themes, were such an interesting take on a post-apocalyptic community. It's not the first time it's been done, of course. There are a lot of other post-apocalyptic stories that have communities like this, but the way it's executed in The Last of Us is what I enjoyed the most. While talking about the game to some friends, I had this bizarre idea. It's really, really weird, but I'd like to see a community of people who use fungal plates of the infected to fend off outsiders, enemies, and such. Since the fungus doesn't really spread through touch, if a group of people perpetually wore gas masks and used the infected's defenses against them, most people would be too afraid to fight them. You do your best to survive in the brutal world of The Last of Us, so something like that wouldn't be too crazy for me. They could fashion armor out of the fungal plates, create shields and newer weapons. In a bizarre way, they'd embrace the infection rather than hide from it. It's a pretty batshit idea, I know, but I'd still love to see something like that. What about you? What do you think? What would you say is something, a type of infected or a type of community that's completely out of the ordinary that you'd like to see? Something that will truly blow all the other shit out of the water. Because even the Rat King was such a cool concept. When we saw that thing for the first time, at least I was going crazy, because that's the first time we've seen such a strong horror element in The Last of Us. There were subtleties in the horror in the first game, but in the second game, especially in the hospital with Abby, the horror elements just took me through the roof. And through all of this, through all of these weird ideas, and through all of these wants and needs for the characters and the narrative, one thing I know for certain is that the story that's told needs to leave me emotionally shattered. For me, the story needs to keep that heavy sense of realism the last two games have delivered, because as most of you know, The Last of Us universe is one that could be ours. One wrong turn and we could end up the exact same way. It's this knowledge that kind of leads us to feel so attached to these characters. They're all going through true human emotions, conflicts, and situations, so we can relate. These games held up a mirror to our faces, showed us the brutality of the human condition. Some of us didn't like it, and some of us embraced it. But even that, the polarized reaction and the way we recoiled at our own demons is what makes these games so fundamentally human. If anything, They did what they needed to do. They showed us how broken we truly are under everything. And yet, I still want to feel broken. I still want to be left that way. I want to be left thinking about this game for days and weeks after I played, the same way I did with the last two. I want to feel emotionally taxed. I want my heart and my soul to feel heavy. While I'm playing, I want to truly feel the weight of every complex human thought and action, to live vicariously through my controller, through the characters we've all learned to love and empathize with. I want this next game to cause a heavy impact on me when I experience it. I want to feel for the characters. I want to love them more than I already do. Naughty Dog have accomplished so much with these games, and I have faith that they'll continue to do so with everything they put out. The stories they have told will be remembered for years and years, maybe decades even. They're not afraid to take the steps necessary to communicate the harsh truth, which is something I'll always admire. Whatever happens, whatever Naughty Dog decides to do, I have trust in them. I have faith in their choices and decisions. I know that they'll deliver a beautifully emotional and gripping narrative, and a perfect experience. I'll play whatever they put out because they've consistently delivered to us. So, whatever the future holds for The Last of Us, whatever the future holds for Naughty Dog, I'll be ready. That's all I have to say for this video. Thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to look for the light, and goodbye for now.